Hello and welcome to Feedback on the week of February 22nd. A handful of people in the studio have also returned from Vegas with me. I think
Still
their voices,
tired.
I'm exhausted, and my voice, humidity was like below 10%.
That was awful.
Yeah, like my lips feel leathery. It feels like Clint Eastwood's
That's a
face.
terrifying
Somehow
description.
my lips. I know.
Do people who live in Vegas eventually get used to that, or is it just a city of dry people?
Yeah, that's what I don't know.
We're from the Midwest, and the cold would be our equivalent, I bet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, I should introduce our panel. Larger than normal.
Dudes.
Over here, we have Andrew Pfister. And our special guest today is Michael Leffler, here to talk about Heavy Rain with us, because he's got one of them cinematic eyes, and we wanted that kind of an input on this. Of course, Sterling McGarvey.
What's up?
And Patrick Klepek.
Hello.
So let's kick things off and kind of talk a little bit about the DICE stuff, which I will reiterate to our viewers. There is a stupid amount of this stuff that's on our website, and only on our website. Hot Topics panels, some really fascinating lectures, and some great interviews. If you haven't looked at it, shame on you. Fix the shame and go watch it. I feel like an NPR, pledge drive right there.
That was
like,
on
You're
this morning.
stealing from us.
It's edumacational. All the times everybody says stuff like, hey, I'm looking to break into the gaming industry. You know what
Yeah.
GDC's like? Watching panels where guys are on stage giving a lecture.
Yeah.
If you're bored by that, reconsider your career
Yeah,
path.
then if you don't find it interesting, then you probably shouldn't think about making games and shouldn't talk about
Or
them
you could
either.
go on the tester.
Ooh.
Yes, you could go on the tester. What are you? A tester. I'm on the tester. So just kind of, what was your sense of kind of some of the lessons that we brought back from DICE 2010?
I mean, talking to a lot of the gaming executives, game designers at DICE, one of the big takeaways I got from DICE was that the industry has really learned a lot of lessons in the past, year and a half, 2 years, in that, we kind of thought that video games, because it's by virtue of being entertainment, is kind of shielded from this whole recession thing. And as it turns out, from the top to the bottom, looking at Activision, what they did a couple of weeks back, that's not true. And, talking to people like Ted Price, we're like, you used to be able to make a lot of big bets in a lot of different areas. And that is not the case anymore. You need to have your stuff down pat. You need to have guarantees. And at the same time, you were there and we're seeing things like Borderlands being, rewarded for its, taking a risk on its art and stuff like that. So there were a lot of bright spots, but I think a lot of it was, seeing the industry really growing up and sort of running into its first sort of, we saw, when the video game had its crash, decades ago, and that easily could have happened, and everyone keeps talking about that with the kind of glut of, kind of crappy games on the Wii, but, the industry's growing up, and, I think being able to survive something like this, and come out relatively intact, at DICE was like, a lot of people like EA's John Shepard saying, don't freak out, the world is not, the industry's not going anywhere, it's just, we're learning some lessons and taking our lumps.
A big tone from a lot of the panels that I picked up on was just helping each other out. And these are the warning signs you should be looking for in these certain areas. And, just be careful out there.
And that's a very good point, because I think we're all kind of guilty of it. I know on X-Play with every E3, the console wars. This whole idea that there's this sport that's inside of the industry of everyone competing with one another. But I think when you go to something like DICE and when you go to something like GDC, there really is a sense of cooperation that other people's successes are not to the deficit of somebody else. When things are up, everyone seems to help each other out.
That competition happens with the first party posturing, but if you're a third party dev, then it's all just sharing all the time.
Yeah, it is. And now on live, there was a presentation of that. This obviously it kind of popped at GDC last year, and this is more or less the cloud computing service where, if I have a laptop that has a screen, I will be able to access a video game remotely at 720p and then play
if you've got a laptop, a PC, a Mac, an iPhone, they've also essentially said that the iPad, pretty much any sort of mobile device, any device that can connect to the internet somehow, you'll be able to stream this stuff. And they've gone underground ever since the GDC unveiling, and they've kind of been doing the private beta test. And there's been some reports out of that, but it's mostly under NDA, and they showed, a live demo at DICE, and there are still issues with that, and I understand, you're never going to get rid of latency, at least not in the short term with the way North America is sort of internet lanes work, but by what they showed and the idea of on-demand streaming video games, look at every other form of media, and it's going that direction, and to say that video games aren't going towards what OnLive is saying is just irresponsible. It might not be on live. but that is where games are going, and that's how people are going to want to consume it down the line.
And you know what? The latency issue, I think, kind of comes to sort of, when people are trying to buy a TV and you're suddenly hit with all these numbers, like how many hertz does it have? These are like that latency is probably only important to a professional gamer. And that's not the majority of people who are playing games out there. And yeah, it'll be sufficient. And also, wow, if you can play a single player game, and it's streaming that quickly, and you're able to play it,
like if they're able to do something, we can offer you, Burnout Paradise or Gears of War 3 for $30, or you can go get it latency free for $60 on a disc at the store. What are a lot of people going to do?
Exactly. Leffler?
Yeah.
Would you play on live?
I would. I totally would if like you say, the lag or the latency was low enough that I couldn't really tell. Because I think you talk about the numbers. I don't think specific technical numbers make a difference to most people. I think it's just performance. If I can't tell, like my girlfriend, I'm like, oh, the HD TV, look at this, and she's like, it looks the same as a DVD, and I'm like, but to her it doesn't matter.
That's a really good point.
Is.
My parents, they think HD is widescreen, so like they've got their, big TV set up with composite cables, and it's being all stretched, but they're like, oh, that's HD. We did it right? No. So it's really all perception on what you think you're supposed to be doing.
Sterling, here's the one thing about On Live. The name.
Yeah.
Is it sexy enough? It is video games. We have PlayStations, we have Xboxes, and we have Wiis. On Live, it isn't very demonstrative of the service, nor is it necessarily kind of get my heart going pitter-patter, pitter-patter.
No, but it is easy to say, and it does have connotations because you think of Xbox Live and you think of online. It's like the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup of buzzwords.
I never thought of it that way. That's a really good point.
It also maybe gives them breathing room if the games thing works out well, that they can go into other media as their own company.
That's what I'm thinking, and I think they're being very wise at focusing on one thing first, rather than, hey, we're going to give you everything all at the same time. Then you don't know who the hell to try to sell that to. Let's talk about a couple more things from DICE. Bobby Kotick.
Yes.
Easily the most anticipated presentation, I think, because they had pulled out extra chairs and everyone wondered if something was going to happen.
It's by far the most packed panel at DICE, and it was interesting. I know, Andrew, you had some interesting reactions to his 35-minute speech, was it?
It seemed like 35 to 40 minutes. The stuff he was saying, when he's talking, it doesn't come across as sinister or as evil as you might read in a news report on G4 or on any of the blogs. Like he's been vilified so much that you go into everything he says with that expectation, but there's still like this air of creepiness to what he's saying.
There was something
mild hypocrisy as well.
Well, there was an air of hubris about it. Like he knew he was there to kind of rehabilitate his image, but at the same time, he wasn't going to just say, give some mea culpa.
Yeah,
and he really didn't. He was taking pot shots at EA. I found it interesting that he would be so open with the fact that he doesn't have time to play games and that he won't play games because of what he feels is a compulsive nature in himself, and he wouldn't get any other work done.
It was oddly like he came to DICE to become relatable while at the same time admitting, I can't relate to any of you. Because, a lot of things you hear from people like Riccatello or Shepard or Peter Moore is just like how involved they are on a day-to-day level, or at least attempting to be involved on a day level, and he was just like, nah.
Yeah,
he'd rather focus on making the money.
The one thing he said, which I know is honest, is how much regard he has to have for his shareholders. And that's what I was talking about in my soapbox, that is the part that really worries me, is that they want to grow so fast and they go for this public funding, and then suddenly so much of the creative decisions of the company are now in the hands of a lot of people that really couldn't give a crap about creative direction, and that's the most important thing for long-term growth if you want to establish a new IP.
Well, and to that point, he admitted a couple of mistakes he made. One was in I forget what The Sims was originally called. Project Jefferson or something like that. Anyway, so he essentially said he was offered The Sims, passed on it, and that was a mistake. And then he also, Alex Rogopoulos might have been in the room at the time, and he said that essentially apologized to Harmonix for. They bought Red Octane, who had sort of worked with Harmonix to pioneer Guitar Hero, and just they didn't even bother to go to Harmonix to visit to them to see what they were doing. At that point, they were clearly probably prototyping what would eventually become Rock Band, and said that was a mistake for essentially creating a schism in the music space, thus hurting both brands, demonstrably, and saying that maybe he should have gone a different route and bought Harmonix. But, like we said, it always comes with like a tinge of disingenuity, is that he's shutting down Red Octane. Like just happened. He's keeping a couple of the founders, folding them into Activision, but
the rest
the
A lot
rest
of
is
them
gone.
are out of jobs. Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, you're saying I should have bought Harmonix at the same time that you're shutting down the studio. So it's just like, are you actually apologizing, or you just made a crappy business decision?
Yeah, it was altogether strange. There's also, I don't know, I think I mentioned this to you when Paul Simon was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. He was giving some speech that was just kind of strange, and then he decided to just kind of insult Art Garfunkel. And it was like, it was just, maybe it's just because he's small and Paul Simon is small, and they both just kind of have this, like, I was a schoolyard bully, or I wasn't, and now I want to be a little bit kind of feisty there. But the whole thing just left me with an unpleasant taste in my mouth.
Yeah, I think that kind of sums up the whole speech in general.
It made me think that of all the game companies, I really wouldn't want to work there if that's kind of the nature of the leadership.
I wanted to believe him, but I just came away with it just not feeling it.
Now, would you invite him over for tea, Leslie?
I might let him invite me over for tea to his nice big mansion. I think
that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think that like leadership in that, as long as he's not doing things like passing on the Sims or like limiting creativity, I think that his eye is on the business ball, and it's like that's kind of his job in a big way. He doesn't have to be a jerk about it, but like that's his job, is to bring money in, and his job is to hire good creative people to do the creative thing and let them do their creative job.
Right.
I'm not really that concerned that he doesn't play games. It's like, does the head of, I'm sure the head of Warner Brothers watches movies, but but they hire Christopher Nolan to do Batman and let him do his Batman thing, and you get a good Batman movie out of it.
The other comment of his that he made that just kind of pricked my ears up was that he didn't understand why a online Warcraft would be that popular. Like, he just did not get it. And then eventually World of Warcraft happened. It's like, oh, okay, yeah. Now I own it.
I wish I could remember what my original thought was on World of Warcraft, because it was just so damn long ago that I don't recall that. Okay, one of the things, this was like my highlight of Dyson. It's a video that's up there. I know there's been some funky stuff with the camera work. We're going to have a new version of it that's going to be up there very, very soon. It may not be up there right now. But Mike Capps and Chris Taylor talking about the challenges of remaining an independent studio. I wouldn't say I learned a ton in the course of this, but it was one of the most fun and lively things I have ever seen. Sterling, did you get a chance to check out the repartee?
I haven't had a chance to because I've been in the throes of editing a few things, but it's something I'm looking forward to. It's Chris Taylor, and there's one thing. You put a mic in front of Chris Taylor's face, he's going to say something interesting.
I think more or less when he said, my children are going to community college because of Demigod, was terribly blunt and probably painfully honest. And
that those two were so interesting too, because you forget that Epic Games is an independent studio. Like, they have this massive financing branch as a result of Unreal Engine, and then also the smart partnerships they've made with things like Gears of War. But they are an independent studio, and by and large, one of the most, if not the largest compared to, like, it's hard to tell. We don't get specific numbers on these guys, but they're up there. And it's just, you forget they're an independent studio when they're always partnering with these big guys. And that was one of the things they really were, empowering, and something that Chris Taylor was talking about, and that when I was talking with Ted Price, who's, kind of partnered with Sony, was that the value that to stay independent, you need to have really strong partners, and you can't do it all on your own. And that was one of the things that as independent, you need to learn how to find the guys that can lift you up. Because as much as you can find ways to stick around, you can't do everything by yourself.
No. And obviously it worked well for them. I think owning a piece of tech that you can license to other people is one of the wiser things you can do as an
same thing with
studio.
Valve and Steam, or Valve and working with EA. It's the same kind of thing.
And I think it's one of those things why a company like Insomniac really is in a position to have to put out a game on a yearly basis, is they don't have that alternate revenue stream.
Yeah.
Which, that's like a Saturday morning cartoon of Ratchet and Clank. That's what I say. That's how
they don't show Saturday morning cartoons anymore.
They don't?
I don't think so. I think they killed it off last year. Yeah.
Okay, a weekly cartoon.
There are still cartoons. And what was so cool about seeing actually both of these involved you, but at the beginning we saw those guys talk about being independent as part of these sort of larger studios, and then which was bookended by you hosting the Indie Games Challenge, which is like this epitome of seeing the industry finding ways for these indie developers that would normally create stuff that would just kind of get tossed on the internet and maybe get some attention. Now they can make some money and actually, turn themselves into professional designers.
And their games were evaluated by Academy members, and I don't think these small, or just the small Academy members.
Yeah.
Like very, very big names checked out these games, and Randy Pitchford was in the audience and was blown away by all 12 of these finalists. And some of these games made me feel really stupid because they were hard, but all of them really deserve to be checked out. One last thing I will say to that. It is one of the greatest pleasures of my career to be able to sit on a stage and tell someone who probably is at the age of 19 that they have just won $100,000.
That is.
I wish that would have happened to me.
I wasn't expecting.
Can you do that for me?
I can say it. I can say it every day of the week.
Say it and send it back home to your parents.
That floppy little head of yours be like, you have won $100,000.
Can we record a video where you say that, and I'll send it to my parents, and I'll make them feel really
Well,
good.
if you're just saying it, make it like 10 million or something.
Yeah.
Something really
While we're
high.
at it.
Well, I want it to be realistic.
I think we are going to have some video of the challenge that's going to be up on the site. I don't know if it's there now, and I know it's going to be on
Soon.
X-Play. Also, you should definitely check out all 12 of those games. I think almost all of them are available in some fashion on PC or on the iPhone. The winners, Gears and Cogs. Cogs is on the iPhone right now, and it's worth checking out.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's
those
one of the
games
ones.
are great.
It makes me feel so stupid at times. I'm like, no, it's so
I remember,
hard.
a few months ago I saw it when they did Indiecade in the LA area, and it was fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic game. Glad to see they won a big prize.
No. And they did, I think, as we all can say inside of this room. All right, let's move on to our game of the week. I think this has been eagerly anticipated to hear this discussion from our viewers out there. I think we've been dying to do this. Now, word of warning, we are not actively attempting to spoil this game. Although to discuss any of this game, we have to talk about some things that happen in the game. We've kind of worked on what we think is a good cutoff point, where we don't want to go too much further or just kind of skirt over it. But obviously, you have been forewarned. I also think that if you have not played the game, listen to our discussion, then listen to it after we play the game, and you might get a little more insight into some of what we're saying. Well, let's just start with it. I think we can say for all 5 of us in this room, no one here thinks this is a perfect game, but it is a fascinating. I mean, I don't want to say interesting because that always sounds like you're just trying not to say bad. No, this game is not bad. It's just I still think about it. I can't make heads or tails of what happened to me there.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's like it's a kind of game that it's just not going to appeal to everybody, but at the same time, you want to recommend that everybody play it.
Yeah,
And it's hard to verbalize why, but it's just the things that it does. It's less of a game and more of like an interactive story that you're playing out. And people I've seen online are railing against it and having these preconceived judgments against it. Like, no, it's not a game at all. I'm like, well, no, but that doesn't instantly, mean that you shouldn't check it out or experience it. Like,
Well, I think you said in your review that
working within definitions,
yes,
this is a new
it's not a
definition.
burger if it's not ground meat between a bun, but
Right.
there's some other good filling in between the bread
This is
that's
like
worth
a
tasting.
turkey burger or something.
I don't like turkey burgers. I don't think it's that like
Yeah.
tuna.
But,
Anyway.
yeah,
Buffalo chicken.
I mean, I think you said like, ooh, I love buffalo chicken. Just because it's a different way of playing a game doesn't mean it's not it doesn't invalidate the other games out there.
Right.
A new type of interacting with a game doesn't invalidate the other ways. It's just a different way. Just the same way the Wii doesn't evaluate the 360 and PS3. And I think that's, some people when they overreact to Heavy Rain when seeing it is that, well, I don't want games to go in this direction. Well, they're not.
Yeah.
So
Trust
chill
me,
out.
given how much work went into this title, I think very few developers outside of Quantic Dream will go there. I think one of the first things that we should talk about is, and this goes to the point of people's preconceived notions of the games, is it just a series of QuickTime events? No, but trying to explain how it isn't is, I find, very, very challenging. It's like QuickTime events is usually a button to do something more magical than the game was going to allow you to do.
Well, I think that what's different, like usually a QuickTime event for like historically has been like you're playing this type of gameplay that's all like you're pressing buttons and controlling everything directly, and then suddenly it takes all the control away from you. This game, like, it eases you into a whole new way of controlling this environment, so it doesn't feel like a separation of like there are events that are very much like kind of like QuickTime events, but just there isn't just a fail state. There's so many branches that it can take that it feels organic, and it feels like I'm totally interacting with this and my blood is racing. I'm not entirely certain like how you would explain it, but it's the whole thing is a different.
Right.
No, I think the fail state is crucial to that, because the idea is that like it's so frustrating when playing like a Bayonetta or a Dante's Inferno or like other games where like you see a lot of these QuickTime events when you're doing like these giant boss battles, is that when you miss that triangle press, it's like, oh, red screen, game over, do it again. Like, that's not fun. Like, those events are only fun the first time. And then when you screw it up, it's not fun to do it again because you've already seen the action that you could take and you've seen how you missed it. In Heavy Rain, what's interesting is that something else happens. So you might miss, a triangle and maybe a character dies and maybe they don't. And so the idea is that it keeps going. And that is probably the most compelling reason. Not only is it that it keeps going, but that also the big difference between any other game that uses QuickTime events and Heavy Rain is that the just where the button is placed, like it's along, like when a punch is gone and you're going to hit a triangle, the triangle is on the fist. So at least there's some sort of physicality to the interface that isn't there in other games where it's just like a giant button at the bottom of the screen.
It taps into your like associations with the human body and gestures, and like it taps into quick reaction times and quick decisions, and knowing that there are repercussions, you just have to go with your gut.
Now, I think we can all say, and I'll look to you, Sterling, since you and I were the ones when we were playing it that were kind of jumping up and down and running outside to have a quiet, emphatic discussion about the game. There is, and for those who don't think it's visceral, I found it very visceral, especially a sequence at the very close to the end of the game that involves a fair amount of violence that my heart was just pounding. But I'm going to go ahead and bring up a sequence that is in the game that is not that far into it. Where you are driving against traffic on the freeway. And I thought that was really the high point. That was the first, whoa.
Yeah.
I didn't even think that a game could do this moment when I was playing Heavy Rain.
That was the shortest tweet I ever sent out in my life. It just said, shook. I stopped the game and was like, oh my God, what did I just do? And the next day I came in, and immediately I knew you'd finished it. I knew Andrew was playing it. Like, seriously, finally being able to talk about this game has been like trying to hold my pee for 2 weeks. It's just been like, oh my God, we're finally talking about Heavy Rain.
And it's been a whole lot of me around the office going, guys, the game isn't out yet. Go outside.
Okay, guys, let's go to the soda machine or something. But in terms of intensity, in terms of the snap judgments you have to make, I think it goes above and beyond QuickTime event. I think trying to dismiss
we need a new term.
Yeah. I think the way that people try to describe it, it kind of does it a disservice.
Real-time decision making,
interacting, but not like
It's interacting, but also when you take the fail out of it, Because when you're on the freeway, I only played that sequence once. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how many things have gone wrong, but I kept on thinking, oh my God, if I screw this up, I'm going to die. And then I'm just hitting other cars because you are hitting the trigger to try to go right and you're trying to go left. And depending upon how severe the situation is, that prompt may be up for only a short period of time versus a long period of time. And not so much in the driving sequence. No, I think maybe in a couple parts of the driving sequence, you're being forced to try to hold down buttons at the same time that the game assumes you cannot do. It wants to create the tension of you trying to do something that is nearly impossible. And I was shaking after
that's the key to that whole scene for me, because in video game history, there have been plenty of car chases. But the way that they do it is that, instead of seeing it from over the shoulder or behind or from top down, you're in the car and the camera is changing angles and showing you stuff that you're about to run into and then switching back to you. It's the cinematic presentation of it that creates that stress, that creates that split-second reaction time. Like, oh, I have half a second after this cut to make a decision.
Which I think that's what separates it from most QuickTime events, because usually I like watching other people play those sequences because then I can watch all the care and animation and awesomeness going on in the background, but usually I'm just focusing on when's the X button going to come up. And I don't know exactly how Quantic Dream did it, but all of these interactive action scenes, I was totally in the scene as opposed to waiting for the prompt.
Yes.
Like it put my mind and my emotions in doing it, and I was exactly like you. I'm like, because I knew going into it, characters can die in this game and you can't take it back. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. I'm
I didn't realize until after that scene was over that I was holding my controller like this, like a steering wheel. I looked down like, oh wow, that got me.
Actually, let's read this comment from Sheo Dagana?
Sure.
Sheo Dagana. I share PS3 with my roommate, so the best part about Heavy Rain so far is that it seems like it's also the kind of game that's fun to watch someone play. Metal Gear Solid 4 ended up being kind of the same way. It's interesting to see all the different narrative styles developers are exploring these days. This is, with a caveat, I know Sterling's going to agree with me on this one. This is a game you can have someone watch you play, especially if they know that, hey, you might get something completely different out of it. if you are playing with your spouse, your loved one, someone who you want to maintain a certain perception in their eyes, it can be slightly challenging because you may make some judgments that are just snap judgments and they won't talk to you for a couple of hours.
That is unfortunate.
Yes.
Well, I think that I think this game is fine to watch as an observer, but in a way, I think it's almost kind of a bad game to watch as an observer because the interactive experience is kind of so like not insidious. That's got a bad connotation, but it's like it's so subtle that like actually interacting with it like really enhances the experience of playing it, even if it's just walking around or an action scene. Like actually interacting with it, I don't know if that would be as fun as watching another more action-packed game, as an observer. So
it doesn't have the same repetition.
Right, that's
and
true.
I
That is
don't
true,
mean that
yeah.
as bad repetition, that each new moment is a new moment. I think that's why my wife was able to sit there and, I still had to make her watch, but, scary sequences were making her just as tense. But then there's the added pressure she was putting on me of making sure that I didn't let the character die. It is an interesting way to play a game.
Well, one of the interesting things I thought, watching this game's development and then also my reaction to it has been, sort of part of the discussion I've, had in the office as people have been playing, and I've just gotten around to playing it this week, is sort of, I think for a while Heavy Rain was positioned as a game that like, people that don't play games are going to find this interesting. And I think as we found out as the games come in, I think people that don't like games are going to find this game incredibly uninteresting as a result of things like, well, that the game takes 8 to 10 hours to tell a narrative. And also that, like, I think that gamers find it interesting that you're using a controller to do mundane actions. I don't know if people that don't play games think it's interesting that I have to shake the controller to, say, brush my teeth or something like that. And I understand that the game is doing that to explain the control mechanics, but that's a whole 2 hours that it's setting everything up.
It is that if there's one thing, and I still feel that the very beginning of the game, which I think was in the demo, is significally more underproduced than the rest of the
totally
game.
agree.
And my heart was sinking when I was doing the shaving. Which because I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be into this, and I want to be into this, and then it completely changed. Let's talk for a sec. We talked a little bit about the controls and how the game plays. But then this really is an interactive narrative, and the whole notion of its cinematic portrayal, some of it is so very good, and then I think some of it falls short because it's trying to reach such heights.
I think I found the experience actually, and I was a skeptic at first. For months, I'm like, I don't know what this game's about. This game is going to be the stupidest game ever. I can't believe we're doing so
I
many
was
creepers.
right there. I was like, this game's going to suck.
And
I loved saying that to make people angry.
and at the beginning, and I found the experience incredibly uneven because at the beginning of the game, which, it's all idyllic and it's happy, and you're doing these things that it's teaching you how to play, but I found the characters completely bland and uninteresting, and I was not engaged at all in their narrative. And usually games, like, you give them kind of a buy as far as the story goes, but this game is asking me to invest in this story, and it's like movies, this opening sequence where you don't really learn anything really that interesting about the guy. He's kind of a stock guy. He's an architect, which is kind of the go-to profession if you want your guy to kind of have some artistry in his life, but not have to explain what he does. He's an architect,
And he has money.
Yeah, and he has money.
For whatever reason, if you design a house, you live in a really nice pad.
Right.
That is just an established
That is the
cliche.
rule.
The classic George Costanza fallback. Yeah, I'm an architect.
You're
But
right.
like, and what I found is like, you're like, oh, but it's a game, so it's a buy. It's like, well, you can't forgive that really because every movie has to overcome this same problem of like, okay, I know nothing about these people. You have to get me interested in you, in your story in like 5 minutes.
Yeah,
I
and
thought
instead
that-
it's like
Yeah.
2 hours long.
Yeah, and I thought that Heavy Rain kind of failed at that. It took a long time to get it going, like the torque it takes to get the game going. But that freeway sequence that you talked about, that was the first time when I was officially in. It had completely hooked me because the gameplay is interesting and the physicality of it's great, and then as a piece of the plot and as a sequence,
Yes.
in a movie that would have been awesome. And that's what, to succeed, that Heavy Rain basically needed every one of their scenes to be as compelling as if it had been in a movie, but you get to interact with it and it's a new experience.
And I think as we're saying, there's other very exciting sequences that happen before the freeway, but they seem to be more fascinating in a standalone way and not in how they're kind of blending into the overall story. Now, Sterling, I was going to ask you, at what point for you in playing the game did you go, okay, hold on, yeah, I'm invested? I mean, for me, it was playing the first interactive Panic Attack. I felt like someone had made a game just for me, and that happened rather early on. But when you were playing, because I think you were getting about as excited as I was, what was that first tipping point for you?
I would probably say one of the first times you play as Scott Shelby, and he's in the convenience store, and you've got to stop this robbery from happening. And as he's trying to talk the guy down, and you've got these options, and they're jumping out around you. The text is dancing around. It's like, you've got to come up with something quick. What are you going to do to keep this guy from aiming the gun at you? I'm going to say this. Okay, he's starting to calm down. He's talking to me. I can take another step. God, I shouldn't have stepped on those potato chips.
Should have knocked over that bottle. Should not walk down.
So you're feeling this variety of emotions that are coming at you so fast. It's like regret, but at the same time there's tension, and they do a great job of heightening it. I feel like a lot of the scenes in that game, what it's so good at is raising the stakes.
And in that scene, that's one of the first times where it teaches you that, the options that it gives you for thinking or decisions, they're not always telegraphing what the actual outcome of that's going to be.
No. And I think that was the first use of split screen.
I think so, like the 24 style.
I believe so. At least the first time that I was like, this is a little bit on the tense side.
I thought the split screen was actually really effective in that scene because for the first time I finally got why they did that, because there's a shot where it's from behind you and you get your hands up and there's a close-up of the robber and there's a close-up of Scott Shelby. And I was editing with my eyes because I was checking the reactions of the guy. I was checking Scott's reactions. I was looking around. I was like, oh, so I can survey, I can have this awareness, because in a game you don't have peripheral vision. You don't have your other senses. That it's like, oh, I have a spatial sense of this scene of what's going on. And I wanted to say that this is a really subtle thing, and this, probably thinking about it, is the first time that I started to get it, was when you're in the police station as Ethan getting interrogated. And I don't think it has I don't think it affects the outcome, but they ask you, what time was it? And I'm like, I don't know what time it was. And then it says, what was your child wearing? And I was like, I don't know. And I was like, I played with that kid for a half hour.
Don't you feel like a bad
There's a guilt.
dad?
Yeah.
And that was awesome, because I don't think your answer affects anything. That oh, he's wearing green pants. Yes, we found him, because I don't think
Game's over.
But that totally put me in that situation, because I was like, I have no idea what he was wearing. And it really put me on the spot, like as a person, and I felt bad that I didn't know what he was wearing. So
I had that when you're at the park with your son, and it's not the merry-go-round, but it's that thing like the carousel. You put kids on it and you spin it.
Yeah.
And I still hadn't gotten a couple of ideas of the controls down, and I failed on the third fail. I mean, the kid looks up and he's like, that's okay. I didn't want to do it anyway.
He's speaking to you, the player.
And I was like,
That's all right.
I was ready for like the PSN to like report me to Child Protective Services. And I was going to get busted for it. Now, I want to read this comment from David C, because I think it starts to kind of play into when I talk about the child. We're going to get to the voice acting in a quick sec. I wonder that if the same story you played were a movie, would it have garnered a positive critical opinion? Is it as good as a movie like Zodiac, one of my favorites? Good taste, actually. Or does it fall back on cliches that are somehow more acceptable because the mere idea of being this cinematic is an exciting prospect for gamers? This is, I think, the core of the conundrum, because so much of what's exciting about this is that we don't know if we can call it a game. But I think we are all if we took this story and we pulled it out and put it in a different format, I think it would be less satisfying.
I have kind of an analogy. I don't know if it's exactly right, but I feel like this game is an important experiment.
Yeah.
In saying like this is a glimpse at what is possible in the future. I personally did not like the resolution of the story really much at all. But it's almost like The Jazz Singer, which is like, that was like the first movie that like had like sync sound, and it's always like technical achievements. I don't know anybody who's going to go back and watch The Jazz Singer now, because we've moved beyond it, because we've got that was the baby steps of the medium, and like
you always point to it saying, look at what that did.
This is an important case study. This is an important, to take lessons away from.
Also, I'll feel a lot less awkward playing Heavy Rain again in several years than trying to watch The Jazz Singer.
Yes. I was going to make the crack too myself. I was like, I would have done the Great Train Robbery. Because I'm like, it's impressive because they filmed a train robbery and no one had ever done that before. I mean, it is a more cinematic game, but it does not reach the level of cinematicness.
I think part of the problem is the uncanny valley.
Yes.
People it's funny because Madison is in the game a lot. She's the girl, and And then in some of the behind the scenes stuff, you see the actress that plays her, and it's like, oh, that kind of looks like a living hot version of this robot that's been in this game the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's tough to relate to people. You know, it's tough to relate to them in certain intimate situations where you're like, you're totally losing
Not
me here
buying
because
it, not buying it.
I can't relate to them. You know, they're
And that happens with. I mean, I know we're probably all on the same page. I think everyone will be on the same page with the voices, which is like so woefully inconsistent, and
they're not
like,
American voice actors for a game that is put in Philadelphia
yes.
and is an American
I
landscape.
was like, Ethan kind of sounds like Jay Leno sometimes,
Yeah.
and it was, and like even you know, like when you're yelling for Joshua, and it's like. Even simple things like it's the same voice sample and it's the same awful voice sample.
Yeah, Jason.
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 Yeah.
Jason.
It's the same one over and over again, and it's those things that you know.
Jason.
It's those things over and over again, and you know, for a game that is such a bleeding edge experiment, you know. On one hand, you want to be like, well, you know, I understand why that falls through the cracks. But at the same time, when you go to that, when you want to be that extreme in the cinematism of the game, that's what's gonna stick out. Like that stuff.
I think also because, and this is true with the graphics as well. Like those load screens, it is what I remember seeing from the demos at Gamescom and E3.
The
this
full
amazing
face,
face where you have dry patches, but you never are dealing with the character that close up ever in the course of the game. And so a lot of this wonderful detail is lost, and what you're left with are animations that don't quite ring true and then voices that just don't sound right. And I think it's because they're creating a situation that so many times is so compelling and realistic that they're kind of obligated to go all the way, because anywhere they fall short, it is really apparent.
And the animations themselves are, you know, opposite. Like then the cutscene stuff, the stuff that they pre-directed, that looks great. It looks fantastic. Like the car chase scene and the fight scenes are really great. But then you're walking around in a room just very stiffly, and then turning on on a pivot, and it's just
and a lot of times,
why?
And a lot of times, like it's kind of tough to get the direction down. Or the times when like I'll be trying to walk with me, and you'll try to walk with me, and all of a sudden I'm walking in the opposite direction, and
trying to walk around a coffee table.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I
Yeah.
played a lot of Resident Evil, so I was like, oh, this feels familiar.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, we've all been very aware of these problems, but all of us are very eager and animated in having this discussion because this game has just stuck with me. I mean, there's just something curious and there's something different, and that when it was at its good moments, and some of those moments I think still actually do function very well emotionally. It's so high that I think that, you know, I don't remember those negatives anywhere near as much as I do the positives.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that stuck out to me was its treatment of violence, because video game industry, like, violence. Every game's got guns and you're shooting things. Like, this is one of the first games where the violence really felt visceral and real in a way. It's like
emotionally charged violence.
And not satisfying. I mean, I think
yeah.
Like, because you fight somebody, and it's not like a two-punch exchange. You're like, oh, you're
Or a
bad at
health
Sam
bar.
Fisher.
Yeah.
It's like, no,
It's a brawl.
You're fighting somebody, and it goes on for a long time because human bodies are really tough, and unless you're, you know, a professional, like, you can't hurt somebody or subdue them very quickly, you know?
Plus, I mean, most people when they fight and they're not MMA or in boxing don't look very good when fighting.
they don't.
It's
See, Jersey Shore.
yeah.
I have to say, the fight choreographer, whoever choreographed all of the action scenes, deserves a medal because it was amazing. Just from just how the fight progressed and it moves around the environments, they were all really, really good.
Well, plus also if you look at the credits, there's people that actually are called set directors. That they were very thoughtful about how to lay out the environments that you'd be interacting in. I mean, I cannot wait for the postmortem on this game because I think hopefully they'll be quite honest on where things fell short. And I think they fell short for financial or for, I mean...
Eventually they had to release a game.
I mean, that's the thing. As Matt Heil pointed out to me that the thing with the voice acting is surprising because Sony doesn't usually skimp on stuff like that. I mean, Uncharted 2 and Ratchet are living examples of that there is just clearly some pressure. You know, they are supposed to be making more games for Sony, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're contracted to do more. And you know what? I almost, given that how glaring some of it is, I almost get, I'm making a wild assumption that they thought it was good. Like, I don't think this was a matter of skimping or cutting corners, because so much of the game wasn't, and it's been in development for so long. I think they just misjudged, and I think this is a product of a game developed in another country that they
I
were
would agree with
going
that.
for something and they just missed the mark.
Just
And
based
I
on the
don't think
videos
yeah.
that you can unlock, they show you the voice actors and the voice acting process, and everything's hunky dory during that process. Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
they went through a lot of casting to get to those guys, and those guys were barely good enough, and some were just not
And
good.
this is a game where this game is intro. They've got the names of the actors,
Yeah.
in big so they were confident in these people, and I don't think it was a matter of rushing or budget. I think they just chose poorly for the audience that they were targeting
Agreed.
first, which are Americans and an American story.
I think some stronger oversight with a producer who has an eye towards the international audience rather than kind of what you can only expect from creative people. It's like they can't always be troubled by matters such as that, or else you'll never make anything that's as unique as Heavy Rain is. So I think we're going to wrap up our Heavy Rain discussion. I know we are planning to do one of our talkabouts on this game that we might do differently also.
There's plenty to talk about with
Because
this game.
Yeah.
what we have not spoken of is how I think all 5 of us in this room had very different endings to the game. Some of which we liked, which is me, and some of which we did not like.
And there are some
which was your initial.
important plot points that need to be discussed
but we
in
wanna
spoilery
avoid
detail.
the
So we'll
spoilers.
work something out.
So moving on to our question of the week: older gamers versus younger gamers. Older wins.
Yes.
Every time.
Ooh.
No cloud
Just because
wins.
you guys are crotchety and old.
Chris Hero 22. I have always wondered if the kids of today, I wish it was just kids today,
Capitalized.
who have grown up with the consoles we have now, seem to play games for seemingly different reasons. Do you guys think older games who experienced the early console days have a greater sense of appreciation for the gaming industry as a whole? I can't count the times I felt like a younger person plays a game to cure boredom, whereas I see a lot of older gamers play a game because they actually enjoy it. That might be a little severe.
It's kind of harsh at the end. I think it was reaching up there, and then the last part
But
was a little bit harsh.
I like the part where they say an appreciation for the gaming industry as a whole. And I don't want to say they don't have an appreciation, but I came from a time when it wasn't clear if games were always going to be there. And so
Or if it was a temporary medium.
so there's a sense of I tend to very much want to just celebrate anything good that happens in the gaming industry because I'm probably still in the mindset like I need you here.
I would actually say that when he uses the term industry or consoles, I think he means medium, and I think that when you get older, and this is true for any form of entertainment, you can read a book, watch a movie, listen to music, play a video game when you're young, and you'll enjoy it. But it's not till you've had you grow up and you can look back and reflect and judge why you liked or didn't like something, and that only comes with experience. That you can judge it as a medium.
As a kid, your attention span is so fleeting; you just bounce from one thing to another. It's kind of depressing to think that a game is the only cure to boredom for a child. I remember going outside and playing. I don't know if they still do that anymore.
I read books. I was really lonely, and I was like, "Ooh, H.P. Lovecraft. He knows how the world's going to get me too."
You must have had some terrifying nightmares as a child.
I did. Well, actually, I had the displeasure. I don't know what my dad was thinking. I saw the movie Johnny Got His Gun when I was 10.
That's unfortunate.
That is a recipe for disaster.
we in this room have a mutual friend whose dad showed him The Shining at age 8, I believe.
Oh,
Yes.
nice.
He'll go unnamed, but he knows who he is.
That's
Yeah.
actually the age when I started reading Stephen King.
I started pretty. Yeah, I started. I remember I read The Mist, and it wasn't even published in Skeleton Crew. It was in some anthology of horror writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I finished it December 24th of some year, and I had the worst pre-Christmas nightmare. At the end of it, my dad was somehow being eaten by an armadillo.
Merry
Everyone's
Christmas.
had that dream.
See, it's the
Or nightmare.
Southwest. It's just
Or
plain
nightmare.
scary. But back to this. I mean, do you think there is some sort of innate difference between us older gamers and the younger gamers?
I think only in the way that there's a difference in like younger people that watch cartoons and older people that watch television. It's like, it's a maturity level, and it's not. I think the idea that kids only play to ease their boredom is doesn't understand what's really going on there. It's like I watched a lot of Voltron when I was a kid.
Yeah, me too.
And Voltron is a terrible show.
But it wasn't terrible at the to you're watching it. It's the best thing ever.
No,
Come on.
I believe
But now
our brains, Phil, did all the in-betweens.
Yeah.
Right.
We actually had fluid animation when we were watching it.
Same thing if you go back and look and watch G.I. Joe or Transformers or all of our favorites. They're terrible.
Yeah, but now I can appreciate, Zodiac, for example,
Yeah.
like from before. It's like I can appreciate that movie. I'm not still watching Voltron because as a kid I was programmed to learn that Voltron is what TV is, and that's all I can watch.
It's like the difference between Cartoon Network and Adult Swim.
Now, here's the one thing, and granted, I'm doing this based upon years of having to read comments and forum posts.
Yeah.
And I know it's the word I know all of you we have used many times, the entitlement issue. That, there is this sense when we read, at least among game enthusiasts that venture into the bowels of our site, that they feel that somehow that game needs to serve them in a very particular way, and that whatever it is that they want from the game is indicative of what everybody wants.
Which could explain why people are getting upset about Heavy Rain.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing.
It's also entitlement, and try to imagine, what your first game you played, and then how that set your, like say Mario Brothers was your first game. That's a common ground we can have. What your expectations for games going forward, the rest of your life, are based on that first experience with Mario Brothers. Now imagine kids that their first game is like something on the Wii or a Call of Duty. Like what your expectation for a game is completely changes based on what those first couple of years are. And it's hard to relate to that because instead we're like, oh no, you don't remember, 8-bit's not an old school thing. That's, we call it old school, but that's what we grew up on.
My first sampling of video games was Super Mario, like it was the smorgasbord of Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, Gumshoe, Legend of Zelda, like all these different types. And that's how I I attribute that to like my general taste in games now because I can find
that's what you
enjoyment
always
in
go back to.
Right.
Yeah. It's a primordial ooze.
The
the
sampler platter.
Evolved.
It's for me. It was Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah, exactly.
It was going to the scary ass bowling alley in Richmond, Golden Gate Lanes, and watching people who I think would do horrible things to me play Ghosts and Goblins because they had a machine there. But all I cared about in playing that game was to see what the next level looked like, and that I think has always fed what I'm interested in games is I want to see the next level of creativity. Sterling, what were you going to say?
I think the biggest thing that I think a lot of us take for granted also is look at the communication divide. Look at the difference in communication and the way we interact with each other now versus 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
You look at a teenage gamer from 1994 reading a review of Sega Genesis games in EGM and going, I disagree with this review. I'm so pissed off. I'm going to write a letter to the editor. That takes too much work.
Yeah.
and whereas now it is immediate feedback and therefore there's a whole argument online very quickly that blows up and disappears about as quickly as it probably took a lot of yesteryear's teens to go through an issue of EGM.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that today's kids have access to faster feedback, and therefore I think that's part of what causes the divide is when I was 15, hell yeah, if I disagreed with the score, I was like, they're wrong. They suck. I was too lazy to write a letter.
Yeah, you just bitch about it with your friends, somewhere,
you just go,
outside.
They're full of crap, But now, oh no, everybody gets in your face because it's easier.
Yeah, and that somehow we're going to do something about it. We won't. All right.
I'd like to say that Kids of Today is a great band name.
Yeah.
I'm gonna claim that.
Yeah, I do like that.
That's an indie name.
Yeah.
So I think that's it for this week of feedback. One other thing, if you have not read Andrew Pfister's review of Heavy Rain, please do. It is one of the best reviews I've ever read because it is incredibly informative, thoughtful, and spoiler-free. How you pulled that off with this game, I have yet to understand because I refuse to review it just as a result of that. Also, once again, check out all of those DICE videos. Just check out everything on the site. It's going to keep us employed, and we would appreciate that. And you get more feedback as a return. Mike Leffler, thank you for making a guest appearance. Next time we have these one of cinematical types games, we'll bring you down here to bring that eye that does cinema things.
We'll have you sit in a tall director's chair, too, just to drive that
I like that. But you have to talk
We're going to force you to do that.
Can I wear a fake beard?
Yes.
Exactly.
I'll supply the beret.
And Sterling, thank you for dropping by. Patrick, I'll see you next week. We will have Abby Happy back next week. She gets to do this thing called vacation. We're going to try that soon, too.
Yeah, right.
All right. And with that, we'll see you next week with feedback. Hello there. I'm Adam Sessler, host of X-Play, editor-in-chief at G4TV.com. I talk a lot about video games, and sometimes a camera is in front of me when I'm doing that. We call that Sessler's Soapbox. It takes about 2 minutes of your time, but trust me, you will hear invective and joy and probably a lot of rude things like you've never heard before in the context of video games. I do it for you, so you should check it out. It's up every Tuesday on G4TV.com.